If Saudi Arabia ever wanted a nuclear weapon, they simply give money to Pakistan and buy a nuclear weapon of Pakistan. Long back, it was the Americans who initially gave Iran their first nuclear reactor. Why does Saudi Arabia need clean technology? Because it goes against their very business model. Hopes to bring billions upon billions of dollars to the United States because this is a U.S. company. It's going to be selling equipment. All this money goes to the United States of America. But what is in it for Donald Trump, apart from the money? Experts have said that once you give civilian nuclear technology to Saudi Arabia, they're going to end up making bombs. Iran is hell-bent on making a nuclear weapon, irrespective of what Donald Trump says. Iran is going to go ahead and do it. If Iran gets a nuclear weapon, Saudi Arabia gets a nuclear weapon, do you think the UAE is going to be left behind? No. The U.S. Saudi nuclear deal is the talk of the town. Everybody's speaking about it and how it can shape the dynamics in the Middle East. Now, there are already two countries. Egypt is technically not in the Middle East, but it is in North Africa, very, very close to the Middle East. Egypt has civilian nuclear energy, and so does the UAE. Saudi Arabia has made no bones about it. They said that if Iran develops a nuclear weapon, so shall we. Saudi Arabia has friends, it has money, it has oil, it has the kind of diplomatic reach that Iran can never hope to match. So what are we talking about today? Let's discuss this in great detail because the U.S. Saudi Arabia nuclear deal has set tongues wagging. Hi, I'm Major Gaurav Arya and you're watching Open Collar. The U.S. and Saudi Arabia, ladies and gentlemen, will have this agreement which hopes to deny Russia and China some sort of influence in the Middle East. That is number one. It will strengthen the partnership between the US and Saudi Arabia. So this is point number one that we are discussing here today. Westinghouse Electric will make these AP1000 nuclear reactors for Saudi Arabia. This is the same nuclear reactor that they tried to sell to India. Were not successful. Westinghouse has a presence in India, but it's more of a corporate presence. They are not delivering nuclear reactors. They're not constructing any nuclear reactors in India. Point number three is that each reactor produces around 1,100 megawatts of electricity. The 30-year U.S.-Saudi agreement hopes to bring billions upon billions of dollars to the United States because this is a U.S. company. It's going to be selling equipment to Saudi Arabia. The US and Saudi Arabia have been engaged in a lot of talk about this. This is known as the Section 123 agreement, and the US has now agreed. In spite of whatever differences of opinion that they had in the past, Donald Trump announced it. But now something else has happened, and I'm going to explain what that something else is. Apart from that, this is a civil nuclear program, strengthening US-Saudi partnership, denying strategic importance to Russia and China, AP1000 reactor among major beneficiaries, tens of billions of dollars over 30 years. All this money goes to the United States of America. But what is in it for Donald Trump, apart from the money? Now, why is this controversial? Experts have said that once you give civilian nuclear technology to Saudi Arabia, they're going to end up making bombs. It's as simple as that. And many experts have warned the US and other countries about this because the Saudi Arabia sees nuclear energy in the context of Iran. Iran is hell-bent on making a nuclear weapon, irrespective of what Donald Trump says. Iran is going to go ahead and do it. And this, in short, is what is worrying everybody. Donald Trump has agreed that the Saudis can make electricity out of nuclear energy. We have no problems. We'll have American companies supplying technology, doing the stuff for them. But at the end of the day, do the Saudis actually need nuclear energy? This is a question that's being asked. I mean, Saudi Arabia is floating on oil. They supply oil to the entire world. Why does Saudi Arabia need clean technology? Because it goes against their very business model. Their business model is fossil fuel. The business model is not clean energy. Why would they do it? Now, many experts are saying that that is possibly because what Saudi Arabia needs is clean electricity for their own citizens, while they want to export more and more to the entire world so they get in dollars. That is one argument that's being made. So in 2018, Saudi Arabia said that they would acquire a nuclear weapon if Iran ever got a nuclear weapon. This is what I mentioned in the last slide also. And they also said, and this is attributed to Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, who very famously said that, if Saudi Arabia ever wanted a nuclear weapon, they simply give money to Pakistan and buy a nuclear weapon of Pakistan. Now, the US says its conflict with Iran is aimed at preventing Tehran from obtaining a nuclear weapon or enriching uranium to weapon grade level. So in a certain condition, we have the United States of America bombing Iran because it does not want Iran to get its hands on a nuclear weapon. That is one condition. And I think the United States of America and its fears are justified to a very large extent. But then you're creating another nuclear power in the Middle East. You're creating another nuclear power, which is not a democracy, by the way. So you're creating another nuclear power in the Middle East, which will tomorrow, or it just may decide to have nuclear weapons. If you give them the technology, then you've already given them step one. The Americans were the ones who gave Iran their first nuclear reactor. Long back. Long back, it was the Americans who initially gave Iran their first nuclear reactor. And then came the Islamic Revolution and then this mad hunt for a nuclear weapon. It all starts from giving technology. And this is what many experts are saying, that you're creating another Iran, or you could create another Iran. I don't know if these fears are justified or not, but a lot of this stuff is going around the internet. It's, think tanks are discussing these issues about the US giving technology to Saudi Arabia. Now, many experts argue that this deal lacks oversight and safeguards. Once you give technology to Saudi Arabia has money. And Saudi Arabia is amongst the few countries in the world that knows how to weaponize money. They know how to use money as a weapon. Qatar is another country. These guys know how to use money as an instrument, and they will go ahead and use it. If tomorrow Saudi Arabia, and Prince Mohammed bin Salman has said as much, we don't need nuclear weapons. He said it on record. Saudi Arabia does not need nuclear weapons, but if they suspect that Iran is getting a nuclear weapon, they will also get a nuclear weapon. And then you see a nuclear race happening right in the heart of the Middle East. What do you think? If Iran gets a nuclear weapon, Saudi Arabia gets a nuclear weapon, do you think the UAE is going to be left behind? No. All these countries will then, because they have money, they have massive amounts of funds. Do you think Qatar is going to be left behind? Qatar is going to pull strings and push buttons and say that we also want a nuclear weapon. And then there's going to be this mad scramble for nuclear weapons in the Middle East. Saudi Arabia will reportedly not be subject to the IAEA's additional protocol, which provides enhanced inspections and verification. So this is another thing that is scaring the experts. There is no enhanced verification. In fact, they're saying that it lacks basic oversight and safeguards. The additional protocol was a requirement under the Obama-era Iran nuclear deal, and unlike the US-UAE nuclear agreement, Saudi Arabia is not required to forego uranium enrichment or spent fuel reprocessing, the so-called gold standard. So this is another facility that has been extended to Saudi Arabia. But friends, after announcing all of this, and while celebrations were happening, especially in Saudi Arabia and many of Saudi's supporters, Donald Trump suddenly says that Saudis must recognize Israel for the nuclear deal. Now, this is a spanner in the works, so to say. And Donald Trump says that you must be a part of the Abraham Accords and you must recognize Israel. Because once you have diplomatic relations with Israel, the US can be rest assured that they aren't fighting amongst themselves because they're good friends now. At least that is the entire idea. And the US cannot have any sort of danger, actually taking birth right in front of their eyes, started off by the United States, which endangers the very existence of Israel, because these guys have done it once before. I told you, the first nuclear reactor for generating 5 megawatts of electricity was given to Iran by the United States of America. The U.S. Saudi civilian nuclear deal is conditional on Saudi Arabia recognizing Israel. Trump said that the deal would be approved only if Saudi Arabia joins the Abraham Accords. It is unclear whether the condition is written into the agreement or was separately agreed by Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia has previously said it will not recognize Israel without the establishment of a Palestinian state. Now, this is something that, for Saudi Arabia, this is like being caught between a rock and a hard place. So publicly, they have this position that unless a Palestinian state is recognized, we will not recognize Israel. But if tomorrow everybody recognizes a Palestinian state, including the state of Israel, then we will go ahead and recognize Israel also. That is the first part of it. But then there is the second part. Donald Trump may well decide to leave everything in limbo. Let it continue like it is continuing. And how does that put pressure on Saudi Arabia? Simply because Iran is not stopping. Iran will unless you physically stop Iran from getting a nuclear weapon, if you have that kind of strength, the military strength, to physically stop Iran from getting a nuclear weapon, Iran is not going to stop on its own accord. Iran will keep on going hammer and tongs till the time Iran gets a nuclear weapon. And that is going to be extremely dangerous for Saudi Arabia. So Saudi Arabia must do a balancing act. Israel and Abraham Accords on one hand, and Iran chasing a nuclear weapon on the other hand. And there is another factor, and that very important factor is the UAE. The White House said that the nuclear deal would not proceed if Saudi Arabia does not join the Abraham Accords. And the Abraham Accords, you all know UAE, Bahrain, and Israel have already signed it. And now, I think it will take a lot of pressure off Israel if Saudi Arabia, because Saudi Arabia is the center of gravity of Islam. There is no other way to say it. I was at a loss of words how I would describe Saudi Arabia, apart from the fact that it's a very rich country, it's floating in oil, it has massive diplomatic leverage, and everybody listens and respects Saudi Arabia. Apart from that, what really counts is Saudi Arabia has Mecca and Medina. And nothing could be more important for a Muslim country than this. This is the ultimate. So if Saudi Arabia signs the Abraham Accords, there are many Muslim countries at the sidelines, not very rich, not very powerful, just managing to get by. And these countries would end up also signing the Abraham Accords. I think at least that is the idea at the background. And so friends, let me show this to you on a map, how it looks. So nuclear weapon, Israel is the country in the Middle East that has a nuclear weapon that is recognized as a nuclear weapon state. Israel has nuclear missiles, it has ballistic missiles, it can reach almost any part of the Middle East and beyond. It has that capacity and capability, there is no doubt. Then you have Red pursuing nuclear weapons. This is Tehran. It is pursuing nuclear weapons. Tehran wants to build. Tehran has the capacity. It has the capability. It has enriched uranium, which is enriched to 60+%. Not exactly weapons grade, but they can get there. They can get there. They have the manpower. They have the scientific know-how. They have the money and they have the technology, and they are backed by China. So unless Iran is physically stopped, there is nothing stopping Iran from getting a nuclear bomb, maybe in the next couple of years. Nuclear energy now. Egypt, as I said, it is technically in Africa, but Egypt is a country that has civilian nuclear energy. Let me put it this way. Egypt does not have the nuclear bomb, but Egypt has civilian nuclear energy, and so does the United Arab Emirates. Egypt has an agreement with Israel. They're friends. They fought wars before, by the way. They fought very ugly wars before, but now they're friends. Now there is no danger to Israel from Egypt, and Israel and the UAE get along very well. Should the Saudis agree to this nuclear deal and agree to actually recognizing the state of Israel, the US will give Saudi Arabia nuclear technology, which is going to put Saudi Arabia at a totally different pedestal altogether. Saudi Arabia has got tremendous leverage with Muslim countries. I'm not saying all of them. There are many Muslim countries like the UAE who don't get along with Saudi Arabia, like Qatar. They don't get along with Saudi Arabia. But there are 57 Muslim countries, members of the Organization of Islamic Cooperation. And I'm sure that Saudi Arabia can push some major buttons. And I think this would be Donald Trump's calculation also. Thank you for watching this episode of Open Collar. Jai Hind.